So we're learning about the Haggadah today, and we'll start with, towards the beginning, that there's a mitzvah to speak about the Inyanim of Pesach all the whole evening, the night. And so there was the story with Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Elozor Ben Azaryia, Rabbi Akiva, and Rabbi Tarfon, and they were all sitting in Bnei Brak. And they were talking about Yetzias Mitzrayim the whole night, until it came morning, and the Talmidim said, it's time for Krishim Shel Shachris. This is the story at the beginning of the Haggadah. So, in this discussion that they had, Rebbe Elozor Ben Azaryia says, I'm keben shivim shana, I'm like 70 years old. I wasn't able to convince my colleagues about the drasha about Yetzias Mitzrayim. That he says, Shenem ala mantiskes yimtzeis chomer Mitzrayim kol yimei chayecha. Kol yimei chayecha means kol yimei chayecha l'chayv eleilos, that you should say Yetzias Mitzrayim by night. Chachamim meimrim yimei chayecha elam hazeh, kol yimei chayecha l'chayv eleilos Mashiach. The Chachamim said that this pasuk refers to elam hazeh and the days of Mashiach. So, according to the first pshat, which we mentioned in our Maimer, that you wouldn't mention Yetzias Mitzrayim when Mashiach comes. So this is we have in the Haggadah, and it's from the Gemara in Brachos. What's interesting is that Reb Elozor Ben Azaryia says, "I'm keben shivim shana." So what does it mean? I'm like 70 years old. The language of Chachamim is exact. And he could have said, I am 70 years old. How old was he? So in this, there's a number of interesting pshatim. The Gemara in Brachos says he was really 18. And they'd made him the Nasi of Klal Yisrael then. He became the Nasi. And he was only 18. Very wise, very special person. And he consulted with his wife, he should say, take the job. And she said, you look too young. 18-year-old, no one's going to give you respect. So overnight, his beard turned white. So he looked like he was an old man. He looked like he was 70. So that's one shot. The Gemara Yerushalmi says that he was 16, even younger. And the Avudraham says he was 13. So when he says I'm like 70, he wasn't 70. He was much, much younger. So how was he like 70? Well, where's the number 70 come from? Well, so there's a principle that's brought down in the Kabbalah. Chassidus speaks about it. It's well established that there's the concept of Gilgulim, that every neshama, it comes down in the world not only once. The tachlis, the purpose of neshamas coming down into the world, is in order to refine the world with our Veda of Torah, Veda Gemilas Chasadim. And each specific part of the world we're involved with, that is what we're supposed to imbue with godliness. And it's very specific for each neshama. Each person has their body, their nefesh abamis, their chelkei ba'olam, that part of the world in which they're involved, their clothing, their house, their business, the street they live on. All the details of their life is part of what should be imbued with Elokus. And Mashiach will come when every neshama has fulfilled its mission. Now, there were 600,000 Yidden coming out of Mitzrayim, which was 600,000 neshamas kloliyim. Kloliyim means that it's a neshama that includes within it many details of other neshamas. And each of these are divided up. So there's a myriad of neshamas in nefesh, ruach, neshama on all the different levels of the worlds, Atzilus, Bria, Siyah, Nesiyah. all many different levels of neshamas, and all or from all the spheres, and each one has its own specific mission to accomplish. So when one person takes one apple and eats it, and says a bracha, and then learns and davens, the energy that is in that apple that's being created is now elevated into kedusha. This is and throughout the generations, each generation has had its specific avodah. In the times of the Beis Hamikdash, the main avodah was love and fear of Hashem. There was godliness revealed in the Beis Hamikdash. It was felt. So when you feel the connection to Hashem, brings out the love of the fear of Hashem. So that was their avodah. Today, especially close towards the end of Golus, there's a different avodah. We learned in the Maimah that one of the most difficult tests that we have, difficulties, is not to be affected by people that make fun. So this you need Mesiras Nefesh. This you need a dedication to Hashem, which is higher than how we feel, higher than intellect, higher than seichel. So that's the avodah today, more Mesiras Nefesh, tika Kabbalah soil, tika avodah. Each generation has its own specific aspect of serving Hashem. And so the neshamas come down, the different aspects of the neshamas come down to fulfill that mission depending on the throughout the centuries, what time it comes down. If it's today, 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago. We were all by Matan Torah, though, 3,300 years ago. So there's the concept of Gilgulim. Gilgulim means the neshama has been down here before. However, a different aspect of the neshama has to come down again in order to fulfill its mission here. And why does it come down? There's nothing wrong with the neshama. It's not that it has to be fixed. The Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya that the purpose of neshama coming down is to impact the world, to change the nefesh habamas, to bring godliness into the guf and nefesh habamas of each individual, and chelke ba'olam. That's its purpose. The neshama doesn't need a fix for itself. It's a chelik elikam emal. It's part of Hashem's godly, and it's totally good. However, through the process down here in Olam Hazeh, it also gains and has an aliyah as well by being in the guf. But its purpose is to imbue the physical with ruchnis. So we become more refined, and we elevate the whole world around us. Not always do we know, or rather, most of the time, we don't know who our neshama is, where we come from. You know, you have today the word generational trauma. In other words, there's stuff that gets passed on from generation to generation that we're affected by. In the Krish Mashalamita, we say to Hashem that anybody who's offended us in any way shouldn't be held against them. We forgive them. And this interesting expression we say, begil gozeh, begil golacher, whether it's in our lifetime or in a previous lifetime. There could be things that happen to our neshama that are still hanging around, and we say to Hashem, if it's anything that will affect somebody else's position, then we forgive them. We let it go. So this is a well-established Torah concept that there's an effect on from previous generations to us. Would it be nice to know who you come from? Maybe, maybe not. But Rabbi Elozor Ben Azaryia knew. He knew whose neshama was an extension of. He lived at the time around the Churban of Bayis Sheni. However, and at that time, we'll take on he was 18. Where did his neshama come from? He knew that he was a Gilgul of Shmuel HaNavi's neshama. Shmuel was the Navi that anointed Shaul HaMelech and David HaMelech, that was born as a result of Chana's Tefillah, a great tzaddik, and leader of the Jewish people. And Rabbi Elozor Ben Azaryia also was the Nasi. He was made the Nasi. So he says, he knew, how old was Shmuel HaNavi when he passed away? 52. So 52 plus 18 is 70. So he felt that he had, not only did his neshama come from Shmuel HaNavi, he had all the energy, the Torah, the, the Kedusha, that and the accomplishments that there was by Shmuel Navi. He felt he had that also within him, and that's why, and it was shining through. So that's why they made him the Nasi, a unique individual. So when he says, "I'm like 70," he hadn't lived 70 years as Elozor Ben Azaryia, but he had the spiritual energy and accomplishments of the previous life of this neshama, had the aspect of his neshama that was from Shmuel Navi, 52 years, and so he was like 70. It's a very, very interesting look about who he was and what he meant. And so the lesson we take from that, and everything in the Haggadah, even though a lot of things can appear to be very simple and even silly in some ways, but the Chazal tell us that everything of the Haggadah, everything we do on the night of the Seder, is steeped in tremendously deep areas of Kedusha. So one of the lessons that the Rebbe teaches us from the story is that one could think, I'm here living so far, so long after the times of the Beis Hamikdash. Who am I? What am I? What's the whole generation? We don't have the Beis Hamikdash. We don't have all the Torah giants like the Tanoim and Amoraim. We don't have all the Nevi'im and that would encourage us to learn Torah mitzvahs. And a person could feel about themselves. How much have I learned? How much Torah do I have? Depending on one's background and one's lifestyle. So the lesson is, we're not alone. We're not a standalone entity. We have within us all of the Torah and mitzvahs and Kedusha and self-sacrifice and dedication to Hashem that all the previous generations have done, collectively and individually. So each person has, we come from Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. We come from our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents. We come from all the neshamas that have been invested in our neshama also. We are part of a huge picture of millions of Yidden and neshamas too. And all of that good is implanted within us to give us the strength to serve Hashem today through Torah mitzvahs, Torah Veda, Milos Chasodim. We have all that good is there. You might ask, what about the bad? The bad also we would have. He says, no, the bad's disappeared. First of all, when the neshama leaves Olam Hazeh, it goes up to Gan Eden, has to go through a process to get into Gan Eden, and that dissipates all the negativity. And also, those neshamas could have done tshuva. The tshuva can take away very, very quickly the negative effects of what would happen. So the negative has disappeared, and the positive is still in full force. And that's the message from when he says, Ani keben shivim shana. He had the energy of all the previous generations, Shmuel and Navi in particular. And so we also have, and so we're like a dwarf on the shoulders of a giant, that through this we'll have the koyach to fulfill our mission and usher the world into the time of Mashiach.